What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Back Your Play with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. We are brought to you by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. 20% off your first purchase. Check out the promo code winner right around the corner. Stay warm. Fresh Roasted Coffee, BYP20 is your promo code. Week 13 of the NFL in the books. The home teams did exceptionally well on Thursday, Thanksgiving, Black Friday, and then, of course, we saw what the road teams were able to do. Saw a firing, some more coaches on the hot seat, a suspension that should be longer. We will get into all that with our good friend Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football and Sports Radio, 1029 FM, The Game, Coastal Sports Network, and, of course, always kind enough to join us on BYP and the Drive with Q. First and foremost, hope the holidays were well. I hope that tryptophan didn't sit in your stomach on Thursday watching that slop of the NFL games. But hey, listen, ultimately, the Lions and the Eagles right now, 1-2 in the NFC. The Lions did get the win over Chicago. We saw the lapse late by the Bears and Caleb Williams and Matt Eberflus, and it cost him his job. Now, I think the Raiders kind of said, hey, hold my beer. They one up you. But I'm just curious to get your thoughts. You've been saying that Eberflus was on his way out. They're going to keep polls, which I just don't understand that. But you watch a game like that, it falls on everyone. The rookie quarterback's got to understand situational football. The head coach can't double up at the press conference. And then add insult to injury, Lloyd, they throw him back out there and then they fire him after he meets with the media. So really just a debacle going on with the Bears.
Yeah, it was an ugly situation, and they had to do something, Q. And everybody in America screamed at their TV, "Call a timeout! Call a timeout!" And that's all he had to do. You could see. Look, Caleb Williams is a rookie quarterback. He was getting frazzled. He's trying to audible at the line as the clock's ticking down. Why not take a beat? Give him a chance, and then Q. They really only need about 5 more yards to attempt a field goal. So it was a total mismanagement situation. Eberflus, as you had alluded to earlier, he was my pick as one of the coaches on a hot seat going into the season that would be let go. His record ended up 14-32 regular season. The Bears did have a mini run at the end of last season, which I think kind of saved his job. But at 4-8 this season, and Caleb Williams is a young quarterback. He
Yep.
needs somebody that's going to tutor him. It was obviously not going to be Waldron, who they kind of demoted, took his play calling from his OC. They need to get an offensive minded coach in there, whether it's Ben Johnson, Slowick from the Texans, or somebody else in there to help Williams grow.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Ben Johnson and that offense of the Lions right now, plus 180, the point differential, it's incredible. The winning streak, they're on the winning streak, the Eagles on. We saw the Cowboys get through the Giants. We saw an interesting, again, affair late, Green Bay winning again against Miami. You just have to think if Tua was healthy going forward. But let's get into what transpired over the weekend. And really, first and foremost, the hit on Trevor Lawrence, which a lot of people have been talking about it. I mentioned it yesterday on the Drive with Q on Sports Radio 1029 FM, The Game. And, a lot of back and forth with the listeners. And I think the fact that, Al-Shaair has a track record of dirty hits, late hits, I don't know how people can say that's a bang bang play. I think he should have been suspended for the rest of the season. I could have made the case the rest of the season and next year, but 3 game suspension on the Trevor Lawrence hit where he basically shot himself out like he was a cannon and forearm. I mean, I know the NFL wants to protect the quarterback, but first, is that suspension, does the length of the suspension fit the crime first?
No, in my opinion, Q, I thought it should be longer, and he clearly launched himself. Trevor Lawrence was sliding. He had time to pull up, and then where he delivered the blow, you saw it right away. There was intent there, and it reminds me a lot of like what Vontaze Burfict did in the past and his dirty play for the Bengals, and you know that the league shut him down, I think, for about 8 games or so, and you know Algier, he can make all the excuses he wants
Right.
and say it's a bang bang play, but I just didn't see it that way. And obviously the NFL did. Now it's not the olden days where Roger Goodell was, he hands out the suspensions and appeal and everything. Now they have guys that listen to it, whether it's a Troy Vincent or somebody like that, former players, John Runyon. I know he's served that role before, where they
Mm-hmm.
look at all the evidence and talk to the player, and then they give the suspension. So I think the process is not as harsh as when Goodell was hanging, remember the Pac-Man Jones days and
Sure.
the Ben Roethlisberger. He was known for giving these harsh suspensions, and then the league would kind of stick to him.
Which leads me to the second part of the question slash comment. The NFL, when they hand down suspensions, you often wonder, are we looking at the player's reputation, their resume, their body of work? And in this case, if that's the case, to not double up, but if that's the case, and the point of reference, here's a player that's been known to hit players out of bounds, late hit, suspension, fine. So I feel as though there's no rhyme or reason. If that's Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love, CJ Stroud, Lamar Jackson, we having a different conversation today?
Yeah, the talking heads and the national voices would be on a lot more if he knocked out a frontline quarterback. You hate to be say it like that, but definitely, I thought they should not kind of poo-poo this situation. They should say, you know what, it's been a track record, it's been a history. And then when he was coming off the field fighting with the fans
That's
and
the
just
other
his
thing.
overall demeanor, he's a ticking time bomb. He hate to be like that, but guys like that, you just see it over and over again where they can't get out of their own way, and the league really should step in and kind of say, okay, enough's enough.
We mentioned that Doug Peterson has been on the hot seat. I counted at least 7, 8 potential openings, right? Because we know the Jets are going to need a head coach. I think Gerard Mayo's out in New England. That's a debacle. They've lost three straight. They have no offense. They're trying to work around a young quarterback, but they're 3-10. Who knows what's going to go on with Cincinnati? They score, they put up a lot of points, a lot of offense, but yet they're not winning games. It's the defense. They've dropped three straight. Jacksonville, they've dropped five in a row. They're 2-10. Now you got questions of Trevor Lawrence and his health going forward. The Raiders are imploding. They've dropped eight in a row, one of the worst losing streaks next to the Giants. Dayball might be out. Pierce is going to be out. Who knows what's going to go on in Dallas. Chicago needs a new head coach. The Saints are probably going to need, well, definitely a new head coach. And it goes on and on and on. I feel as though we have this conversation every year where 7, 8, 9 head coaching vacancies. What is that attributed to? Is it just poor hires, retreads? Is it not, teams, GMs, ownerships not doing their due diligence or lack of patience?
There's a lot of wrapped up in this, but I think the biggest thing is they're picking the wrong guys. A lot of times they're saying, okay, someone's vouching for this coach. Whether he's from the McVay tree. Everybody seems to say, okay, the Shanahan McVay tree, and
Right. Good
was he a
point.
crony of them? And
Yep.
maybe they do well in the interview, but a lot of these guys are just not leaders of men, and they're making bad decisions, and then it just gets exacerbated over a 17 game season. You're saying, okay, this guy is he can't manage the game. He can't manage players. What is he here for? And that's where a lot of these owners are impatient. We're seeing that more and more where they're like, the NFL, yes, you can turn around very quickly, but it's a win now league.
Yeah.
They want to win, and they go to these meetings, these owners meetings. They're sitting there with all their buddies, and if they're laughing stock, obviously they want to change some things. So you can't say it's their team, Nate. It's their money. They're going to pay these guys. Think about Matt Rule. He's still getting paid by Carolina Panthers. I think they're paying three coaches at this point, Q. So a lot of these guys, they don't care. They're going to throw the money around, look for the new shiny new toy. But a lot of these coaches are just not going to work out.
It's a Tuesday edition of Back Your Play with Q. Rich Quinones here. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q. We're powered by Fresh Roasted Coffee. The weather has definitely cooled down, and now it's getting a lot colder. So we're talking about a fresh cold brew. How about a nice warm fresh brew, if you will? My friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee, they got you covered. If you want something hot, visit the website, freshroastedcoffee.com. Promo code BYP20. 20% off your first purchase with the holidays right around the corner. Take advantage of that. Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join me on this Tuesday edition of BYP. All right, as far as the games on the field over the weekend, I thought Josh Allen solidified his MVP stature with his performance on Sunday night in the snow and the Bills routing the 49ers. The Eagles have found that formula, that recipe for success. Hand the ball to 26, get the hell out of the way, run the football. That was an impressive win against Baltimore. The Colts got a win late. Steelers, your Steelers over Cincinnati in a high scoring game. I mean, I know Russell Wilson has only had a handful of games this year. They're putting up a lot of points. You might even put him in for comeback player of the year in a small sample size, if you will. So, who had the most impressive win over the weekend in your estimation?
Team wise, I definitely have to think it's Philadelphia Eagles. And last night on my show, I was handing out apologies and I was writing them a letter. I was like, I humbly apologize
You and
because
I both.
you saw me. I just did not believe in the Eagles as a team. They teams they've beaten, the Giants,
Yeah.
Cleveland, the Jacksonville.
Yeah.
But that was a statement win in Baltimore, and you had Saquon Barkley. He only had 40 some yards going into the fourth quarter, but he had 66 yards in the fourth quarter, able to close that game out, got the touchdown. The Eagles are a physical team that likes to run
Yes.
the football, obviously. Hurts is not going to throw the ball. He's very efficient in this game. And then defensively, that's really where I had questions because last year's Eagles defense, they were in the bottom five. So this season, number one ranked across the board, but they shut down Lamar Jackson, kept him in the pocket. They hit him over and over again. And you're starting to see guys like Nolan Smith making plays. And Zach Bond, you cannot talk about, all pro stats without talking about him 13 tackles and half a sack in this game.
Yeah, I want to kind of dive into that game for a moment, a little more in depth, because that's a 9-0 Baltimore lead when they're driving. Lamar Jackson misses a throw right down the sideline, fumbles, takes a sack, pushing back field goal position. Tucker has been abysmal. Like, we're talking about Hall of Fame kickers across the league. Atlanta's kicker struggling, Dallas's kicker struggling, San Fran's kicker struggling, Tucker struggling. These guys that you rely on. Now you're talking, you miss a couple field goals, an extra point. That's 6, 7 points right there. So there's a couple plays in the course of an NFL game where you say to yourself, it changes the complexion of the whole game. I thought that happened. And the fact that, when that happened, I thought it changed everything. And you just had a feeling, keep pounding Saquon. 2 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards. I text my buddy. I said, he's going to rip one off. And what happens? 25 plus, right? And he gets in the end zone. You're right. They don't need to throw the ball. They don't have to have a Winston-like stat line where they're throwing it 39 times in the first half, right? Um, I still believe, can you go into Detroit and match the Lions offensively? I understand the Lions have some injuries on the defensive side of the football. Out of the Lions, Minnesota, and the Eagles right now, if you really break it down, the Eagles have the easiest path to potentially getting the number one seed if the Vikings and the Lions trip up. And just to kind of give you an idea, if you bear with me for a moment, so the Eagles right now maybe trip up against the Steelers. You can live with an AFC conference loss, but then you got Washington. They're going to be fighting for that playoff spot. The Lions have the Packers, Bills, the 49ers, and the Vikings left. The Vikings have the Falcons, the Bears, Seattle, the Packers, and then they close against the Lions. I was just debating this with my buddies. You're potentially talking about the Lions heading into the playoffs on a 15-game winning streak and the Eagles heading into the playoffs on a 12-game winning streak. That's
Yeah, it would be unprecedented. And you're talking about like
Yeah,
uh, Green Bay Packers are 9-3, and they're the third place team in the
Minnesota.
NFC
Yeah.
North. So there's such a disparity in league. There's very good teams, Q, and then you have a bunch of teams that are 2-10, 3-9, and,
Yep.
and um yeah, I'm ready for the playoffs for this sorting out to get because I
Well,
just
who
don't
do you
see a
think's going to get the number
lot
one
of
seed
teams
coming
fighting
out
it.
of the NFC when it's
Oh,
all
I've
said
been
and
back
done?
and forth in this one, and last night on my show, we were really looking at the schedule, same kind of thing. I think Detroit may have a couple losses
I
in
tend
their
to
bag
agree.
right now, and I think the Eagles, with that record that you pointed out, and the teams they're playing, I think the Eagles really could get that number one seed, and of course they want it because you're talking about Minnesota Dome team, you're talking about the Lions Dome team, and then they have to go to cold Lincoln Financial Field to play that game if it came down to NFC Championship game.
So I don't want to discount Green Bay. I think Green Bay's young enough. They play in the cold. They understand the elements. They can run the football. You got a quarterback that makes plays. They got young receivers. I know at times the secondary can be a little suspect, but they can also get to the quarterback. We saw what they did on the road last year against Dallas. They put up a lot of points against a overexposed, if you will, secondary and run defense in the Cowboys. There's still a lot of football left, man. Look, I say it in tongue in cheek. I know the Eagles are laying 12 and a half against the Carolina Panthers, but the Carolina Panthers over the last 5 weeks of the season have played harder and they played more competitive. Bryce Young, you're starting to see Bryce Young figure it out a little bit. I'm not going to say they're going to win that game. They can make it maybe interesting, but it does appear that if the Lions do trip up, the road through the NFC is going to go through South Philly and the link. How about the Buffalo Bills in the AFC? Kansas City caught a break against the Raiders. Let's be honest. They've been dodging bullets left and right. I mean, I don't know what the hell the Raiders were thinking in that spot. That's why I think Pierce is gone. They're going to be looking for a quarterback. I know the kid played well. Kansas City's leaking oil. But I feel as though this is the year, if not now, then when for the Buffalo Bills. And we saw what Allen was able to do the other night, right? Throw a pass, catch a pass, run for a pass, and a touchdown. I mean, he's incredible. I mentioned this the other day. The numbers are not similar, but the fact that he's single-handedly carrying the team, Allen's stat line at times, his performance this season has kind of reminded me of 2015 Cam Newton because that Panthers team didn't have a 1,000-yard rusher. I think Stewart was under 1,000 yards. They didn't have a 1,000-yard receiver. You look at the Bills, it's running back by committee. They love to get the tight end involved. They got some good young wide receivers, but Allen with his legs, with his arm, with his toughness and his guts. That game last night reminded me of Cam Newton scrambling against the Giants, 3rd and 16 in that wild game. That solidified his MVP award. I thought Allen solidified it on Sunday night at home against the 49ers.
Definitely, that was another MVP moment, that play you talked about where he gets the ball pitched back to him, dives in the end zone. But Q, the thing is, he is not turning the football over. That was always his Achilles heel, that he was trying to do too much hero ball. He's cutting down on his turnovers, and as you said, he is leading this team. And yeah, there's this debate, can Saquon overtake him? I just think it's a quarterback-driven award, MVP. I think as well as the way he's playing, the team's record, that is Josh Allen's award to lose. I was looking at the odds yesterday, and he's clearly ahead of everybody. So, playing at a very high level, and I do agree with you that the Bills, there's some opportunity for them to maybe jump up and get that number one seed because Kansas City has been living on the edge
Yes, they
over and
have.
over again. It's going to be interesting to see. They have the Chargers this week. That's a pretty good, tough game. They're at Cleveland, who's another team they playing better than a record. Houston, at Pittsburgh, at Denver. So a lot of trepidation in some of those games, and we'll see if Mahomes is able to rally his team again. But Buffalo, I clearly think that yeah, they have a good fighter's chance to get to number one.
Yeah, and listen, it is the NFL right now at this stage of the game in December. It's a war of attrition, right? 49ers are a banged up team. It's just not their year. They're cooked. The Lions banged up on the defensive side. They need to get some players back, but they're going to be tough at home. The Eagles starting to get, hopefully, if they get Smith back. Goddard was banged up. They get some players back. Their linebackers are playing well. They're getting to the quarterback. Their secondary looks to be up to snuff, and Hurts is playing very simplified football. They're not turning the ball over. They're a very physical team. I think the Bills are the most talented team in the NFL, but I think pound for pound, if I can use the boxing reference, the Eagles are the most physical team out there, right? They're going to smack you on both sides of the football, which makes them a really dangerous out. Then you look at these other teams, and are we believing now in the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Putting up 40 plus against Cincinnati, answering the bell, Russell Wilson turning back the clock, or is this more or less Cincinnati's sliding a little bit? I mean, if I were to ask you, besides Kansas City and Baltimore, because that's just too easy. If we're going to say the Bills right now are the best team in the AFC or maybe the NFL, what team can knock them off in the AFC other than the Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs?
Uh, the Steelers are in a mix, and that was a good win for them. The Bengals are one of those teams. They're better than a record, and it was a scoring match. TJ Watt did get his 2 sacks. He had Hayward get a sack in this game. So the Steelers are much like the Eagles. They're going to run the football, be physical at the line of scrimmage. Their defense is attacking. And then Russell Wilson, he's playing. He's turned back the clock. So he's driving the football down the field. He was 8 of 9 on deep throws, and he's getting Pickens involved and the rest of that group. So yeah, the Steelers could be in the mix, but I don't see Houston jumping up. I don't see the Chargers as well. And we saw the deficiencies of the Baltimore Ravens the other night because Lamar, there were situations where he could run in the game. He
He
did
chose
not.
not
He's
to.
choosing not to. And that defense, which was always their calling card, Q, teams are moving the football on the Ravens, particularly through the air. So I just don't see those other teams jumping up. I do think it's going to be KC and Buffalo in the AFC.
You mentioned Lamar Jackson, right? A lot of people had him pegged for MVP, winning it again this year. Is it me or I feel like him and Mahomes sometimes they want to make it look effortless, but they're dancing and prancing and dicking around a little too much. Like sometimes make the simple throw, like pull the ball down and run. Don't make it harder than it has to be. And like I said, you're up 9-0. You go in, you punch it in. Maybe the Eagles have to abandon the run, even though it was somewhat early in the game. But instead, you missed that pass right down the sideline on the wheel route, wide open, wide receiver. You get the fumble, you push the kicker back. He shanks it. I think sometimes these quarterbacks they try to be too cute, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's the term I was going to use. And for a lot of years we said, "Oh, Tom Brady's boring," the Patriot way, and he would take a field goal. He would run it on third down,
Yeah.
third and six, and then whether it's take a field goal or punt the football and let their defense go out there. But you got to be smart, especially in these late season situations, trying to make that playoff push. And the Ravens, it was disappointing because they missed a lot of plays against the Eagles. And you tip your cap to the Eagles the way they played, but particularly talk about Tucker and his missteps, particularly that extra point that he missed, and that kind of turned the game around. And you know, the good veteran teams find a way to win. That's what it's been all season for the Chiefs. Yes, they probably had some calls falling their way and this and that, but they find a way to win, and the bad teams find a way to lose.
And that's exactly it. The Cowboys, the Giants, the Titans, Jacksonville, Cleveland, the Jets. I mean, the point differential is alarming. The Patriots, Indianapolis has a minus 31 point differential. They're 6-7. The head coach figured, you know what? We're on the road, go for two, right? The analytics, here we go. We're trying to get to the playoffs. This is what we need to do. And I commend him in that regard. Now, I also thought, the wake up call was Seattle and the Jets, because to me, that game pretty much has summed up. It's a microcosm of Aaron Rodgers' cup of coffee with the New York Jets. I mean, just when are they going to realize it was a horrible mistake to bring him in? He's a shell of himself. You can't move forward with him. I think the Jets are the biggest disappointment in the NFL. I think it's one of the worst moves in franchise history, maybe in NFL history, because what was at stake? All the eggs in one basket. So, do you foresee a scenario where the Jets will shut down Aaron Rodgers? They're 3-9, or do you still trot him out there, which would be more embarrassing if they finish? I mean, can you imagine an Aaron Rodgers led team finishing a season with 3 wins, 4 wins? They've got the Dolphins, the Jags, the Ravens, the Bills, the Dolphins. They're probably going to win one more game.
Yeah, and Ulbrich, he seemed to be hedging this week on benching Aaron Rodgers, and then Aaron Rodgers, he just does not display leadership, too. And he has a quote, there's 11 guys on the field, and it's not just me, and he's just not making plays like he used to. Yeah, he was moving a little bit better this week, I thought, but he's 41 years old. He just had his birthday the other day. Not the same player. He's selfish, and guys just are not playing for him. So yeah, maybe take a look at Tyrod Taylor, give him an opportunity out there. And boy, that would be some serious egg on Aaron Rodgers' face because, as I always said, junior GM, he built this whole roster. Now
Yes.
Salah's gone, Joe Douglas is gone. Cobb is now broadcasting, and several of his other cronies are not playing. So, yeah, I could see that happening. And they truly are going to blow this thing up at the end of the season. He won't be back. And if Rodgers is smart, he'll just retire and walk away.
Commanders rebounded, got a nice win, put up 42. We just mentioned Seattle with the big win. Leonard Williams, outstanding, should be defensive player of the week. The Vikings escaped by Arizona 23-22. We touched on a little bit on the Steelers and Cincy. And then you got the Chargers. And I think this is more about, Harbaugh plus 2 to 3 in the win differential category, win loss. We're seeing the quarterback, we're seeing the defense really make some plays. But man, some of these ill-advised throws. Now, we were kind of perplexed and beside ourselves when we learned that the Falcons drafted Penix. I joked with you, I think in August, hey, listen, by week 9 or 10, if Cousins is struggling, is it going to be Penix time? Their head coach also kind of hedged a little bit. That's a really bad loss for the Falcons. Now, you got to put it in perspective, right? Kirk Cousins has no business making some of these sideline throws. But with all that being said, as bad as they played over the last month, they've lost 3 straight. They can't score. They're still in first place in the NFC South, even though Tampa got the big win on the road when they needed it to even up their record at 6-6. So both those squads right now are 6-6. Atlanta jumps Tampa because they're 4-1 in the division. So where are the Falcons right now with Kirk Cousins?
It was a crazy division, Q, and you know they've beaten the Bucks twice this year, so they have that in their back pocket. But Atlanta is just an inconsistent team, and overall the division is. We may see another situation like a couple years ago with Tom
Saints.
Brady, an 8-9 team
Yeah.
make make the playoffs, and Kirk Cousins 4 interceptions in this game, and you're right, Q. Uh, there are a lot of mistakes. The Chargers went for a big punt, didn't get it. They didn't really capitalize on that. It was 9-7 Chargers at the half, so this game was there for the taking. But Atlanta, other than Bijan Robinson, there's just not a lot on this team. Pitts didn't have a catch, so yeah. If Cousins keeps playing like this and the team's in contention, why not give Penix Jr. an opportunity? Because it looks like the end's coming here, but they paid Cousins all that money, and you have to say, okay,
Correct.
Arthur Blank, do you want to pay that much money to a backup quarterback? So we'll see how this division shakes out. I do think, though, that Tampa Bay, if they can get on a little streak here, they could win this division.
All right, game ball and Lackey. I didn't even look because I never look. I like to keep it, a little drama here for the audience. I think I know who game ball is. Now I know you're typically you're partial at times. You'll pick your spots with the defense, but I got to go Leonard Williams. He had to pick six. He had a blocked extra point. I think he had a couple sacks, a couple forced fumbles. Game ball, Leonard Williams.
You're right, man. We're on the same page. And Leonard Williams, 4 tackles, 2 sacks, 92-yard return with that pick six,
Wow,
longest in NFL history for a defensive lineman. And he ran 17.8 miles per hour down
like
the
a
field. I
gazelle.
mean, the big man was moving. Yeah, so there was a lot of other guys I could have gave it to as well, but Leonard Williams definitely got to give it to him. Also got to tip my cap to Josh Allen, as you talked about. Jalen Carter, who's playing at all pro level for the Eagles. Russell Wilson. So there's some other names, but definitely Leonard Williams was incredible in that win.
I mean, I don't. Jameis Winston's fun to watch, right? That by the way, that line's 6.5 when they get the ball near the goal line, and then he throws that ill-advised pick in the game. What do you have? Four picks, three picks. I think what pick sixes last night. But he also threw for close to 500 yards. He should be the starter going forward for Cleveland. I'm going to give him a pass and say it's not. He's not a lackey. How do you not? It could be shared between the Raiders and the Bears. I'm going to say the Bears for their debacle late in that game on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you and I same page again. What's that? I gave to Matt Eberflus, as a head coach, well, now former head coach of this
That's right.
team. He was supposed to be in charge. 30 seconds left in the game. Get the timeout, get everything settled. They end up losing 23-20, very winnable game, and they had that timeout in their back pocket, which was so egregious. So, just the culmination of him in his career with the Bears, and they fire him. But yeah, definitely Cousins, 4 interceptions. We talked about Azeez Al-Shaair and his dirty hit,
Yeah.
and let's not forget Kyler Murray played pretty big this week. He's also in contention for Lackey, and Chuba Hubbard had a bad fumble in overtime. So there's some other guys that are deserving, but definitely Eberflus is our man.
A lot of overs, a lot of points being scored. We always talk about this point of the season where guys are going to start making business decisions, thinking about, again, the travel arrangements, the wives, the girlfriends, the mistresses. They don't know where they're going to go. We have a really interesting Thursday night game, which we'll talk about later on in the week, Green Bay and Detroit. That has monumental, playoff seedings at stake. Let me leave you with this before I let you get out of here. And again, Tuesday edition of BYP with Q. Rich Quinones here. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Rich Q on Q. Catch me Monday, Wednesday, Friday on The Drive with Q. SR 1029 FM The Game. Coastal Sports Network. Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. Give him a follow on social media as well at Lloyd Vance. He's live 8 to 9 on Monday night on 1029. Let me leave you with this. I mentioned the head coaching vacancies, right? And I've talked about this almost in nauseum. All these teams that are successful, we started the show with the suspension. I want to kind of come full circle to make my point with the NFL. It's a quarterback driven league, right? You have to have the right head coach in place, the right GM. You build around the quarterback per se. And I bring this up. We know the draft is in April. I am not enticed by these prospects. And I'm looking at Jacksonville, the Raiders, the Giants, the Jets, Right? These are teams that are going to be in the top five. If you're, let's just say my Giants for a moment, I don't want to see a team get sucked into the appeal or the allure of a Shador Sanders because you're also going to have to deal with Deion Sanders, right? That is a package deal. And that scares me a little bit. But also, I need to know on good faith that if they're not going to, if they're going to fire the head coach or fire the GM, you got to bring somebody in ASAP because the draft's right around the corner. Like this is, and I know you're going to get on me with this. Now I'm starting to hedge and I'm starting to believe that Brian Dable and Joe Shane will get one opportunity to bring in their potential quarterback. But Lloyd, I'm not enamored by any of these quarterbacks coming out. I'm really not. If you're the Giants, would you, if you get the number one draft pick, would you trade that pick?
They could set themselves up for a long time by trading a pick Q, they'd have to debate it. They might have to get a bridge, a journeyman type quarterback come in there and kind of hold down the fort. But I'm kind of with you on these college quarterbacks. I've been watching a lot of college tape and games this season, and none of them jump off the page. And yeah, Shador Sanders makes some nice throws here and there. Carson Beck makes some nice throws. Yours with the Texas does
Yeah, you were,
as
yep.
well, but none of them, all right, they're a luck. You can build your whole team around them. You're going to be set for the next couple of years. And you're right. Dion, being his father, he's going to get involved. They're going to have an agent involved as well. It could be kind of a headache. So why not set yourself up if you could get several number ones for that first round pick and then go from there? Now, it is going to be interesting. The Giants, do they get rid of Shane? Do they get rid of Dable? I didn't really think about it. They never really had their quarterback to build around, but the Giants are looking really bad right now. And you just got to wonder how the Mariners are looking at that situation.
8 or 9 seasons of 10 plus losses, right? I mean, that's pretty friggin' bad. I mean, this rivals, those Parcells eras, right? And to your point with the quarterbacks, I mean, think about this. Everyone was talking about Caleb Williams. Everyone was talking about Jaden Daniels, offensive rookie of the year. You know who's going to win it right now? Bo Nix. I mean, look what Sean Payton's doing with Bo Nix.
Yeah, he's having a great rookie season. And don't
And I
forget
wanted the
Brock
Giants to
Bowers as well.
draft him or Daniels. So we missed out on
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah, Nix and Bowers are definitely in this race. Brock Bowers is putting up some tight end numbers that we have not seen from rookie in a long time since
Yeah.
like Keith Jackson coming along with the Eagles. So, it's going to be fun this rookie race and to see who gets it. But definitely, you thought it was Daniels early, but Washington they did get a nice win the other day, but they've kind of struggled of late.
All right, my friend, we'll do it again later in the week. We'll preview a week 14 already in the NFL, which I mean, it's just I feel like we were doing our divisional breakdowns in August and the weather was 85 and now it's 26 and you got the hot toddy and it's just weather. It's going to be brutal this year, which makes for always some fun playoff football. Obviously, for the Giants and the Jets, that's not happening, but be that as it may, we'll still get into it. Always appreciate a couple moments, my friend. Thank you.
Q, thanks for having me on.